Hey everybody, so this is our first video lesson, our second math lesson, but our very first video lesson. This is lesson 2, powers of 10 and exponents. I'm going to try to make sure I do a slide like this every single time I do a video lesson, just so that it, as you can tell, it tells you what the lesson is, what's the title of the lesson, tells you what A day, when you should be watching it, when B day should be watching this lesson, and down here the little star says what you need for this lesson. So A day, you should be watching this lesson on Wednesday, September 15th, because you are not in class this day. So you got one face-to-face lesson yesterday, the first math lesson, and then today you are doing lesson 2 as a video lesson. B day, you will be using this video as a review or some extra practice. A day, you also are more than welcome to use this as a review because you guys know that, as I've said several times, and I will say it 100, 1,000, a million times more, is that the more you practice with math, the more you do math, the more you are exploring with math, everything, the more math sticks in your brain and the better you're going to get with math. Math is similar to sports or any activity that you have. The more practice you have, the better you get. So let's just move on before I take way too long. You need, number 1, your guided notes and a pencil. And number 2, you will need your math book, but we will not be starting there. We're going to start with our guided notes first. So now before I go on, I know that I told you guys I understand attention spans because my attention span for videos are, 15, 20 minutes long. So I'm going to try to keep our video lessons between 15 and 20 minutes. This one may go a little longer because it's our first video lesson. I want to make sure I'm doing everything as best as I can for you guys. So just bear with me. And if you need to take a break from the video, just pause. Take a little brain break, get up, get you some water, and then, get a snack, come back. But don't go away too long because I don't want you to forget a lot of stuff. Okay, so let's move over to our notes page. So you have these guided notes in your notebook. So go ahead and pull them out and let's get our pencils ready. And we're going to start on the left side right here with the squiggly bubble. And our first question says, what are powers of 10? So I'm going to underline that. What are powers of 10? Well, let's fill in the blanks so we can figure this out. When you use a base, so I want you to put base here, number of 10 with an exponent. So I'm going to briefly stop for a second. That's an N. I need to write that a little better. The beauty about being on a video lesson is that you are able to pause me and rewind me. Please do not fast forward me though, because then you'll miss the lesson. But you have the beauty of, face to face. You just have to either ask me to repeat something, go back to something, or you're not able to pause me, so you have to write really fast or something like that. But when we're on video lessons, it's kind of nice to pause, write what you need to write, rewind so you can go back and listen. And it's just video lessons. I mean, it's not as bad as it may seem. So just let's think about the positives here. Anyway, back to the notes. So what are powers of 10? I'm going to read this through now that we have the blanks filled in. Powers of 10 are when you use a base number of 10 with an exponent. So here is our example, and I've labeled everything so you'll know what I'm talking about. So your base, if you see, I've made the arrow point to the 10 because this word base is telling you that 10 is your base. Now, I'm going to take a brief pause from here. You don't need to go over and write this, but I'm going to go to this little examples and explanations page. So here I'm just going to rewrite what I have on your notes. It says 10, and the way you say this, so this is the word form, of 10 with that little 2. You say this is 10 to the power of 2. That is the most common way. Your book says it slightly different, but we're going to stick with this because this is how you'll hear it most of the time. So how do you say this nice, numbers, jumbled numbers here, is you say 10 to the power of 2. And what this is 10 is your base, and 2 is your exponent. Now, we haven't gotten to exponents in notes yet, but I'm going to go ahead and write that. So 10 is your base, and what that is it's just a big number, because I don't want to get too far ahead. Your base is your biggest number. And for our lesson and our purposes right now, we are only going to be using 10. So that's why the lesson is powers of 10, because your base is always going to stay 10. Now your exponent can change numbers. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It can go up, whatever. But right now, what we're focused on is this base. So our base is 10 and our exponent is 2. Now this equal sign right here says that 10 to the power of 2 actually, so 10 to the power of 2 equals 100. Now I want you to really look at 100, and then I want you to look back at 10 to the power of 2. Look at how many zeros are in 100. There is a 0 here, and there is a 0 here. 2 zeros. My exponent is also 2. So exponent is 2, 2 zeros. Keep that in mind. I hope that's stirring something up in you. So let's go back to our notes. So we just talked about what powers of 10 were. It's when you have your base here is 10. Base is 10. And you have some sort of exponent that goes with it. So let's scroll over. Well, you don't have to scroll over. I do. To the next question. It says, what are exponents? An exponent is the number that tells you how many times to multiply. That's what goes there. Multiply the base by itself. Yes, I don't want you to get too confused. It is literally what it just said. You multiply the base how many ever times your exponent tells you to. So down here is the same number we have, 10 to the power of 2. And here I've pointed out that the base is 10, the exponent is 2. So if you look at the example, it says 10 to the power of 2 equals 10 times 10. Okay, go back. Our exponent's what? Our exponent is the number 2, and our definition said I take the base, which in this problem is 10. Our base is 10. It's your big number. And I multiply it how many ever times the exponent says. Now, what I don't want you to do is to say this is 10 times 2. It is not 10 times 2. It is 10 two times. I have a 10 here and a 10 here. And I multiply those together because my exponent said 2. My exponent said 2, so I have 2 10s. So I'm going to scroll over really quick and add in a page here. So I have 10 to the power of 2. What this says is, it says, Miss Jordan, you have a 2 as your exponent. Take your base, write it 2 times, and then just multiply it together. Now, where does my actual answer come from? Because these two right here are what we call factors, and factors are the numbers you multiply together. Factors are numbers you multiply together. So I have 10 times 10, which is 10 to the power of 2, but I still don't know the answer. Oh, that's easy. Write the number 1 because you are starting with that, or actually, not the number 1. I want you to write the number 10 as your answer. Now, that's not your full answer. But you're writing the number 10 because that is the first digit you're multiplying, or that is the digit you're multiplying by 10. So you take 10 and you write it. Well, then look over at the second number you're multiplying, which is 10, and how many zeros are still left? Well, hello, 1 0 and a 10, so I'm going to add it back here to the end. And this is actually your answer. Now, a little tip that we're going to talk about in a minute is if you look at your exponent and look how many zeros are in your number, or in your product, your answer. The exponent is 2 zeros. The exponent is 2 zeros. What the tip and the trick is I'm trying to tell you here is your exponent always tells you how many zeros you should have in your answer. My exponent is 2. This is saying you need to have 2 zeros in your final answer. And that only works with this lesson, these powers of 10, but it will always work if your base is 10. So let's scroll back over to the notes. Because now we're moving on to practice problems down here. So let's go to number 1. And it says 8 times 10. Whoa, this is something new. Our exponent here is actually a 0. Which, if you notice, I've kind of broken the problems down a bit for you so you can practice. 8 times 10 with an exponent that's 0, really that problem is 8 times 1. And we all know 8 times 1. 8 times 1 is 8. That's pretty easy. So let's go to the second part of this question. 8 times 10 to the first power. Okay, if we think back up to what an exponent is, look back up to the exponent definition. That tells you you should have how many tens that you're multiplying by. Well, the number for the exponent is 1, so I should only multiply by 1 10. Well, what is 8 times 10? Most of you know that pretty quickly. It's 80. 8 times 10 is 80. Now, if you think back to that little tip or trick I told you, the exponent tells you how many zeros to put in your final answer. That exponent is 1. How many zeros do we have in our answer? 1. 80. Beautiful. So let's move on to question number 3. 8 times 10 to the second power. Okay, so that tells me I should have 2 10s, and I've written out that right there for you, 2 10s. So you have 8 times 10 times 10. Now this one's not as simple as the first two, but if you know the tip and trick, you know that you can take the number 8 and you can write it here as your answer, and then look at your exponent, and it is 2. So how many zeros should you have in your final answer? If you said 2, you are correct. Now, you see the exponent's 2, you have 2 10s, and then you have 2 zeros. If you've noticed the pattern, I want you to go ahead and fill in this little bubble here. So pause me and fill in the bubble, because I want you to figure out the pattern. So the pattern that I've hoped you have noticed here, and I'm not going to write it because I don't have enough space, but I'm going to briefly talk about it, is the number of zeros you have is the number exponent you have. So if you have the exponent, your exponent is 4, guess what? You're going to have 4 zeros. If your exponent is 3, your final answer should have 3 zeros. Another pattern you should have noticed too is that your exponent tells you how many 10s to multiply by. So if your exponent is 2, like in our problem here, then you should have 2 10s. So I'm going to scroll over very quickly to another example here. I'm just going to kind of break that up a little bit. So let's do 10 times to the power of 5. Let's try something a little different. 10 to the power of 5. Now what this tells me, and what I want you guys to always do first, is write out the multiplication equation. So my exponent is 5, which tells me I should have 5 10s. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I know I multiply all of those together. Now most of you, and you know, most people can't sit here and really quickly say, oh, the final answer and the product is blah, blah, blah. No, no, no. But most of you should already know the tip and the trick. The exponent not only tells you how many tens you have, the exponent should tell you how many zeros you have. So, in your answer, you should have 5 zeros. So, I'm going to write the number 1, and I'm going to plug in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. Now, make sure you always add your comma. So, here is your product. Here's your final answer. Go back up and count how many zeros you had in your problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everything matches. There's the pattern. The exponent is 5, 5 tens, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros in your answer. So I'm hoping the pattern's sticking with you. Plus, I've added the little tip right here in your notes. Ooh, that was a little big. Tip. Count the zeros and then put that behind the number being multiplied. So over here, what you could have done is put the number 8 like we did and count how many zeros are in your problem. 1, 2, add those zeros. All right, so let's move on. Number 2 is talking about Mary the elephant over here. And Mary the elephant has a little reminder in her talk bubble. If you guys wanted to read that a little later after we finish the problem. Number 2 has 3 parts though. So let's start with A. It says, Mary the elephant weighs 1,000 pounds. How much will 5 elephants weigh? Well, you have to first write the multiplication problem. So how many elephants are we talking about? We're talking about 5 elephants. And you have to multiply 5 elephants times how much 1 elephant is to figure out how much 5 elephants will be altogether. So 5 times how much 1 elephant weighs. Now, we haven't really practiced this type of problem, but you just didn't know it. So I want you to look at 1,000. How many zeros are in 1,000? You should see that there's 3 zeros in 1,000. I want you to wait just a second, and I want you to go ahead, and I want you to write the number 5, okay? And pretend those zeros aren't there. So just for a second, I'm going to scratch those zeros out. And if you kind of ignore those zeros, this problem is really simple. It looks like 5 times 1. And you know 5 times 1 is 5. Well, then bring back your zeros, and guess what? All you have to do is add those zeros into your problem. So now you know 5 elephants weigh 5,000 pounds. So that was a little tip or trick there. Pretty easy. Ignore the zeros, do 5 times 1, which is 5, add the zeros back. Now the next questions get a little more tricky because you have to really think. It says, how can you write 1,000 as a product using factors? If you read Mary's tip, Mary reminded you that factors are the numbers you have to multiply together. Now, this is a problem we really haven't done yet. That's why it's in our practice. That's why we're doing it together. 1,000. Well, we want to write it as a product, 1,000, using factors. So how many tens? This is basically what this question is asking you. How many tens do you need to multiply together to make 1,000? Well, if you remember our zero trick and how many tens there are, how many zeros are in 1,000? 3. So that right there tells you all you have to do is have 3 tens. And 3 tens equal, well, multiplying 3 tens together, will equal 1,000 because you have, and I'm going to change colors just to kind of make it stand out. You put the number 1. And how many zeros do you have in your problem? 1, 2, 3. Add those to your answer. And voila, you have 1,000. So that's all they were really asking you to do was to figure out how many tens it would, I guess I could leave that, how many tens it would take to equal 1,000. 3 zeros in 1,000 equals 3 tens in the problem. Now, question C says, can't read. How can you write the weight of 5 elephants in exponent form? So this one, I kind of wrote the problem a little not fully correct. But what I want you to do is, how can you write 1,000 is really what I wanted that to say. How can you write 1,000 in exponent form? So if you look up at your problem, you've kind of already done this because you've already done 10 times 10 times 10. But if you remember the trick, our base is always going to be 10. And how many zeros are in 1,000? 3. Oh, that's a terrible 3. 3. So, boom, you're done. Exponent form is 10 to the power of 3. And let's see if I can write that a little bit better. Sorry about that. Oop, can't do that. I am struggling to write, guys. Sorry. 3. There we go. Haha. So the exponent form is 10 to the power of 3. That's how you write 1,000 as an exponent, or with a base and an exponent. 3 zeros, the exponent is 3. Now word form, how do you write 10 to the power of 3 in word form? I just told you. 10 to the power of 3. Boom, there's your word form. Now number 3, this one really, I really took this problem and changed it a little bit from the book because it was really a challenge problem and I wanted you guys to have a little practice before you jumped right into it in the book. So it says, what is the value of n? This is a letter. What is the value of n? So look over here at this problem. It is 10 to the power of 5 equals 10 times 10 with an n up there in the exponent. That n is what you call a variable. When you use letters in problems, math problems, you call them variables. And what they're doing is they're just holding a spot for a number. So we have to figure out what number should go where that n is. So the first thing I want us to do is we really need to break down what is 10 to the 5th power in a multiplication problem. And by now, you guys should know that that 5 tells you how many 10s you have to have in your multiplication problem. So I already wrote 1 for you, so you should have how many? 5. Very good, because the exponent is 5. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 10 to the power of 5 equals 10. There's 5 10s multiplied together. 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. There's 5 10s. Now they take it a little step further. And what they do is they get rid of, I'm going to use yellow. They get rid of this 10, this 10, this 10, and this 10. Or they want you to get rid of those 4 10s and kind of put them together. And what I mean by putting them together is if you had 4 10s that you multiplied together, they want you to think about what that would look like in exponent form. So if you had 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, that's 4 10s. But you wanted to write it using exponents, you would do 10 to the 4th power. Because again, you guys should remember that 4 tells you how many 10s you should have. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that does actually equal this nice little 10 to the 5th power. Because 10 to the 5th power is 5 10s. Well, guess what? There's 1 10, and then they're just shortening it up for you, 10 to the power of 4. So over here, your final answer really is, what did n equal? Well, n was your exponent up here. So what exponent did you use right there? You used a 4. So that is our notes page. If you need to go back and rewatch it, re-listen, go right ahead. We're going to skip over to the textbook pages. Now, this textbook page is page 9. And in class, this is our Spark Your Learning. We would have probably done this before we started the lesson. I should have told you guys that before, but you are more than welcome to try it now. It just kind of gets you thinking a little bit. But what I really want to focus on is this page 10. So I want you to turn to page 10 in your textbook. And we're going to do these problems. Well, it's really just one problem with a bunch of layers. So we're going to do this page together to build your understanding, as it says. Number 1. It says 1 bag of playground sand is shown. Here's the bag of playground sand. How many cubic inches of sand are in 10 bags? Well, we don't know that yet. But if we look over here, we do see that there is 1,000 cubic inches for 1 bag of sand. They want to know about 10 bags. So they're going to lead us through this. It says use multiplication to show the number of cubic inches of sand in 10 bags. And then they ask you how many cubic inches that is in all. Well, just like Mary's problem, we have to take 10 bags and we multiply it by how many cubic inches is in 1 bag. So if you look over at the playground sand, it says 1,000 cubic inches. So 1,000 is in 1 bag. We want to know about 10, so we have to multiply 10 times 1,000. Now, do not be nervous, scared because you see 10 times 1,000. Remember what I told you. Pretend these zeros are not there. Okay? Just pretend they're not there. Get them out of your brain for just a second. What does this problem now look like to you? It should look like 10 times 1. Well, you guys know 10 times 1. 10 times 1 is 10. So we're going to write 10. Now, bring back your zeros. If I could show you, I'd have my finger over the zeros, but obviously I can't show you that on the screen. So now bring back these zeros. How many do you have? 1, 2, 3. Add those 3 zeros to your answer. And guess what, guys? You just finished the problem. 10 bags of sand will have 10,000, or will be 10,000 cubic inches. Make sure you always have units on there. Cubic inches is your unit. So the answer to A is 10 times 1,000 equals 10,000. Very good job. Now let's move on to B. It says, how can you write 1,000, here we go, as a product using only factors of 10? If you guys remembered, factors are the numbers you multiply together. Okay, factors are numbers you multiply together. So how many 10s would it take to make 1,000? How can you write 1,000 as a product using only factors of 10? Well, you guys should know the zeros trick by now. How many zeros are in that 1,000? 3. Okay, that tells you how many 10s you should have right there. 3 zeros, 3 10s. So let's do 10 times 10 times 10. So how many factors did that take? That took 1 factor, 2 factors, 3 factors of 10 to make 1,000. Now, if you notice here, it says explain how you know. I want you to talk that out with someone. If you don't have anybody there, you can kind of pretend. You can pause the video and talk like you're talking to a partner in class. But I want you to kind of talk that out. Explain what we just went through. How you know that there should be 3 10s, 10 times 10 times 10, to get the answer of 1,000. Now, let's move on to C, part C. How many factors of 10 are needed to write 1,000 as a product using only factors of 10? Well, we just answered that question. Look back up at B. How many factors did it take you to make 1,000? How many factors of 10? Which basically is saying, how many 10s did you multiply together to get 1,000? You had 3 factors. Now, there's 2 questions here. So, how many factors of 10 to make 1,000? 3 factors to make 1,000. Now that's not it. That's not the only question. Keep reading. How many factors, I'm going to underline that orange, how many factors of 10 are needed to write 10,000 as a product? Well, hint, hint, clue, clue, guys. 3 factors to make 1,000. You have 3 zeros in 1,000. How many zeros are in 10,000? Yes, 4. I knew you guys would catch on. 4 zeros. So that tells you how many tens it would take. It's the same way. 4 zeros, you should have 4 tens. So how many factors? You should have 4 factors of 10 to make 10,000. And I know I'm going over a little bit. So let me add in a little page here. So let's talk about that for a second. 4 factors oh no, everything went away. That's okay. 4 factors of 10 to make 10,000. So what this is telling you is you should have 4 tens in your multiplication problem. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that should equal 10,000. Well, we can see if it does because we take the first 10 and we write it, and then we just add the rest of the zeros in. I have 1 zero, add it, 2, and 3 zeros. And guess what number you now have? 10,000. Beautiful. So I'm going to have to add the page back in if you'll give me just a second. All right, so it took away everything else I had written. So we're just going to kind of move on, if you will. So, C, we've already done it. You should have 4 factors. D, let's look at D here. It's a little big. I got to get better with these pens, guys. How can you write the number of cubic inches of sand in 10 bags in exponent form? Kind of talked about exponents. So if your answer is still up there, I want you to look back at A. You should have 10 times 1,000 equals 10,000 cubic inches. So your answer is 10,000. What they want to know is you have 10,000 cubic inches of sand for your 10 bags. How can you write that using exponents? Well, how many zeros do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So your exponent should be 4. What is your base? Base, that's the big number. Look right over here at base and exponent. Base. Oh, you guys are correct. The base should be 10. But what should our exponent be? Your exponent should be how many zeros you have. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's how you write 10,000 in exponent form. 10 to the power of 4. Last but not least, we have E. It says a power is the number that results from repeatedly multiplying a number by itself. How can you write part D in word form? So part D, here was your answer for part D. How do you write that in word form? We've done that several times. You start with your base, 10, and then you plug in the words to the power of, and then to the power of what? What's your exponent? 4. And that's how you write that in word form. So that was page 10, and that's what we did together. Now, I'm going to plug in page 11 here. And for page 11, I want you guys, let me write it, page 11. I want you to do this as independent practice. I want you to practice. If you notice, it really leads you through things there. And then this check for understanding. probably going to look at that when you get back. But what I'm really going to have you guys, I want you to practice this yourselves. Then page 12, I'm going to add in here. Because this page is what I want you guys, page 12 is your homework page. And this is actually the page that you will submit. You need to submit. You need to submit this today by the end of the day, because I'm going to look at this page. You need to submit it on Schoology if you didn't know that. I'm going to use this page to see what you know and what you don't know and what you still need some help with. That was pretty much our full lesson. I'm sorry that it took so long, but again, it's our first lesson, first video lesson. I'm trying to do the best I can. Please watch, and if you need to, you can rewatch. If you have questions, try emailing me or getting in touch with me on Schoology, and I will try my best to get back to you. If you need more help on this, then just get in touch with me on Friday, and maybe we can do a video chat or a phone call or something. Hope you guys are having a great day.